I'm Angelica Sadar. I want to welcome you to the NRBS Biofeedback Sponsor Series. And today's webinar, as you can see, is sponsored by the Biofeedback Society of South Africa. And if you just give me a minute, I want to inform you of a few announcements related to NRBS before we get rolling with today's webinar. The prior webinar in our CE series, the impact of life events on the brain and behavior, that recording by Dr. Ron Swatsnia is now available on the learning platform. That webinar was Addiction, Cause and Impact on the Adolescent Brain. And then on April 26th, you might want to save your calendar. We're going to be joined by Michael Villanueva, and he's going to talk about how psychedelic substances can impact behavior and the brain. I also want to call your attention to the NRBS podcast. That's growing by leaps and bounds, thanks to Dr. Rosenthal, who is just doing a series of lovely interviews and podcasts. We'll put that link in the chat. And really want to encourage y'all also to make comments about it, like it. That will help get it available to more people. All right, so for today, through the relationship between NRBS and the Biofeedback Society of South Africa, we are honored to welcome Colleen Bo. The NRBS board has committed to striving to create an inclusive culture in our Biofeedback Society related to gender, racial identity, economics, and health status. And to that end, we have been enjoying a developing relationship with Biofeedback Society of South Africa. And for those that you are attending from South Africa today, we invite you to take advantage of the country rates for our membership and for the CE program. You're eligible for those. And if you want a code to register using that for either of those activities, you can email me directly. You can put your name in the chat. We'll make sure you get it. Okay, Colleen Bo serves on the executive board of BFSA, and she's a member of ISNR, as well as other things, but you will see how she is just a perfect match for what we're looking for here with our NRBS series. She's a psychometrist registered with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, and much of her training has centered around the fields of neuro and educational psychology. She's also registered with HPCSA, and as an EEG technician, she works under a neuropsychologist. Seeing the value that neurofeedback added to her own family, she trained in neurofeedback, and in her practice, she offers QEEG analysis, neurotherapy, cognitive and emotional assessments, and has a passion for looking at the whole person. She looks to make a use of an integrated approach and believes that the combination of neuro and biofeedback modalities, as well as advice on supplements, diet, and lifestyle, can go a long way to healing the whole person. I am just delighted to be introducing her today, and just want to thank you and thank your whole society for the arrangements for you to be here. So if you would, please take it away. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Angelica, and thank you so much to everybody attending tonight. We're really honored to be a part of this webinar series. I hope to introduce South Africa to all of you and just tell you what an exciting place we are to be. So I'm going to start off with a little video just showing what our country looks like.
Leave grey behind. Leave your old self behind. Leave ordinary behind. South Africa is different. The you who leave South Africa won't be the same as the you who arrived. You'll find that there's nothing ordinary about this place, because you don't just visit South Africa, you will meet South Africa. You will meet the wide open beaches of the Wild Coast, and a chief whose ancestors have lived in the hills above the Guanyana River for 1,000 years. You'll meet a taxi driver and a shebeen queen who you will never forget. You'll meet the golden light of the Timbavati as it covers everything in a soft amber glow that reminds you of how things once were and could be again. You'll meet a lady called Dani Anna in Boerkap who will write her recipe for pickled fish on the back of the menu. You will meet a 70-year-old surfer who will tell you about the time he sat on his board listening to a whale whose breathing sounded like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. You will go on a walk at night through the bush that you will never forget, because it was the night you felt you saw the stars for the very first time. You'll have supper under an acacia tree as the sun goes down, and giraffes gather by the watering hole. And years later, you'll find that the call of the hippos still seems to echo through your heart. You will meet South Africa, and you'll never be the same again. South Africa and the things you experience here will change the way you see the world and the way you live your life. Because when you open your arms to embrace this country, you'll find that the you who leave South Africa won't be the same you who arrived. Because when you meet South Africa, you'll find that none of it, not one little bit, is ordinary.
Right. Oh, don't know how to do that. Okay, so in the words of our famous President Nelson Mandela, it almost seems impossible until it is done. Sitting here at the bottom of the African continent, it really seemed impossible to bring this amazing form of technology to our shores. But as the Biofeedback Association, we are proud to be celebrating our 10th year as an association in South Africa. The field of bio-neurofeedback in South Africa started more than 20 years ago, when a few South African clinicians became aware of the value it held as a modality in their practices. Individuals made their way to the USA and to Europe to obtain training and to become BCIA certified. Small groups of clinicians worked hard to bring trainers and equipment to this continent and to promote the value of different modalities of biofeedback across different clinical fields. These fields include psychologists, physio and occupational therapists, academics, chiropractors, social workers, homeopaths, and physiologists. 10 years ago, clinicians working in two of our major cities, Johannesburg and Cape Town, started meeting and working towards having more clinicians trained. Both groups sought to set up an association in their respective provinces. With limited resources, it was better to form a unified group, and the Biofeedback Association of South Africa was started. The Cape Town group had started with the groundwork in establishing a legal non-profit organization with a constitution. Both groups agreed to adapt and adopt this constitution and work towards unifying the goals amongst members. We started off with 10 members and we've grown to 70 members. Although our member base includes people of all population groups in South Africa, we recognize the need to diversify this further. The Biofeedback Association of South Africa is a non-profit collegial association, the purpose of which is to grow in providing access to education, continual and ongoing supervision, and guidelines pertaining to the standards of practice concerning bio and neurofeedback. Our main focus has been to encourage and to assist all members to pursue the journey to become BCIA certified in their field of bio and neurofeedback, and in that way establish a solid body of well-trained clinicians. Again, using a quote from Nelson Mandela, our vision is aligned with that of his words, "Education is the most powerful weapon that you can have to change the world." For all its beauty and positivity, South Africa does face unique challenges, which enables our daily lives in every way. As in the USA, one of South Africans' favorite national pastimes is supporting our local sporting teams. But sometimes this happens.
That's it. Over.
Load shedding and the Could I go to the next slide? Okay, so what is load shedding? It's a term not frequently used around the rest of the world.
All right, ladies, here we go. In this round, points are triple. We surveyed 100 people, and the top 5 answers are on the board. Name a reason why you would light a candle. Sadiqa.
Load shedding.
What did you say?
Load shedding.
Load
Shedding.
shedding?
Yes. When the city puts the electricity off for 2-3 hours.
Who the hell thought of that? Load shedding. Okay, let me ask you something. So, how often do they cut the electricity off for this load shed?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Every day? That's stupid. Who thought of that? No. Don't listen.
Right, so load shedding is something of a way of life here in South Africa. We have apps on our smartphones that let us know what times of day the power in our area will be cut. Depending on the level of load shedding announced, and these levels change all the time at short notice, your power is cut for anywhere between 2.5 to 4.5 hour blocks, 2 or 3 times a day. In 2023, we have been on a perpetual level 6, which means that we do not have power for more than 10 hours every day. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, South Africans live in the bottom 2 tiers. Due to the nationwide implementation of these rolling blackouts on a continual basis, moving beyond these difficulties is beyond the capabilities of the average South African.
Deadlock. There's been a hiatus of about... Now to South Africa, where President Ramaphosa is holding emergency meetings to address the country's deepening energy crisis. Authorities have been imposing rolling blackouts as the country's embattled power utility struggles to meet demand. And the power cuts are hitting the economy. DW's Christine Mundwa reports from Johannesburg.
This generator is keeping Thando Magubu's business running, but the backup power solution is not a cheap one, and it's costing a whole lot more to continue serving the local summer favorite in Soweto.
We are fortunate that we have invested in a generator, but the costs of running Soweto Creamery have grown because we need to purchase petrol on a regular basis.
The past few weeks has seen some of the worst power cuts on record in South Africa, with the power utility Eskom rolling out nationwide blackouts, locally referred to as load shedding, for up to as much as 10 hours a day. Even hospitals have not been spared.
It does affect a lot of our equipment that we do have on site. For example, like I have mentioned, we have our elevators that are obviously put onto the generators, which keep going on and off, which have also put patients in very dangerous situations by being inside there and not being able to get out.
In a country that already has high levels of crime, the power outages are further compromising safety and security in some areas.
People are scared to even use the roads at night. That it's so pitch black. It's at the intersection right behind me, being one of the hot spots. People are getting robbed, getting mugged, cars are being stolen at gunpoint. So those are the issues that we face during load shedding, especially.
Even for those of us who are relatively well off, we cannot keep up with the demand. Recently, all major insurance companies announced that they will no longer be insuring fridge or freezer contents, any appliances, or even cover for home invasions should these be as a result of load shedding. Imagine what this means for a local supermarket who struggles to keep stock fresh for 10 hours without power. With the current price of diesel, even those with generators are feeling the pinch, as keeping these powered up for 10 hours a day is not a sustainable business model.
Especially when it's.
Yeah, so this is an example of one page of the app that we use to monitor our power in our areas. So if we're on stage 6, this is for how long your power will be out at these times during the day. And as I said, these chop and change all day as the power utility makes various announcements. In 2022, we had 120 full days of load shedding reaching stage 6. This trend is well set to become emphatically worse, as in 2023, we have already experienced daily blackouts with many more hours in level 6 than ever before. Understandably, the global community is hesitant to invest in South Africa, and the current exchange rate has followed an upward trend, with the rand being around 18 Rand 23 to $1 US. But while we face a lot of challenges, we are ever optimistic, and South Africans know how to find humor in these trying times. This is an advert by a local takeaway shop, so it is a bit of a joke, but it will make you just have an understanding of what it's like in your home when the power is out.
Tonight we bring you a very different story. Let's meet Ishmael Kominati and his family.
Welcome, John. I've seen him on TV. Give me a moment. It's Honey Manifested time. Honey Manifested. Stage 4. Stage 4. Stage 4.
This is our generator.
It's called Andre.
They just for show.
This one's called Coburg. This one's called Kusile.
I love our Arctic chamber.
We don't have to go outside to freeze. We can freeze right here.
The cold water makes me feel alive.
Cold water's good for the veins.
Tightens up everything.
It's great for hide and seek.
Please, stage 4.
Okay, with stage 4, you get 4 free sides.
Stage 4 load shedding will be extended by 9 days.
When days are dark, sides are many. I'm Shahan Ramkisu.
In order to already by our local takeaway franchise, you can imagine that after a long day of work and school, coming home to no power means that you have to make a plan for takeout dinners, do homework in the dark, and often have no water due to the inability of the municipality to pump water to our homes during the blackouts. Our population and circumstances present unique opportunities for research. Not only does South Africa experience high levels of violent crime, the current conditions also expose us to opportunistic crimes. For example, thieves also know when the load shedding schedule is in your area and target those areas to not only invade homes or shops, but go so far as to vandalize substations and steal the copper cables, resulting in prolonged outages as these then need to be repaired and reconnected. It is micro-traumas such as these which have a cumulative effect on the nervous system. Constant uncertainty and worry for the future feeds down to our children when parents feel things are beyond their control. Children hear this narrative and start to feel that their anchor is unstable, which in turn raises anxiety amongst even the youngest of children. In fact, QEEGs in our clinics almost always show an excess of high beta activity. In children as young as 6, we see a prevalence of anxiety as a result of the micro-traumas South Africans are repeatedly exposed to on a daily basis, and the level of hypervigilance required to simply predict when your home will have lights and water, and to safely leave your home on a daily basis. We live in a constant state of fight or flight arousal from an early age, so much so that many of us are not even aware that there is an alternative way to be. In South Africa, we also experience high levels of violent crime, such as home invasions, murder, hijacking, and abduction for ransom. This QEG is of a 55-year-old woman who suffered neglect during childhood. She was happily married, but then her husband was murdered during a house break-in, and she was left with a 1-year-old son to take care of her own. Her child is now 16 years old and in a really bad emotional state, which has had a heavy load for a mother to cope with on top of her own trauma. Another major problem in South Africa is gender-based violence. Recent statistics on crimes against women and children in South Africa indicate that from April to June 2022, a period of only 2 months, 855 women and 243 children were killed in South Africa. Over 11,000 assault with grievous bodily harm cases with female victims were opened by the police. 1,670 such cases involved children. Police are investigating attempted murder dockets for over 1,400 women and children who escaped death. This is only the reported instances. Many are too fearful to speak up about their abuse within their homes, and these crimes go unreported. There is only a 4% success rate in the prosecution of such cases. This QEG is of a 62-year-old woman who initially presented with what appeared to be burnout, but after some time and layers of long-standing gender-based violence, including threats to her physical safety, were uncovered. As the Biofeedback Association of South Africa, our goal is to provide basic and ongoing training, supervision, and mentoring for our members and those interested in becoming practitioners in accordance with BCIA and the Health Professions Council of South Africa's standards. Where we can, South Africans have installed solar systems onto our buildings. Generators hum through the air, keeping production going. And being a neurofeedback practitioner takes these measures to keep our doors open. Backup power is an essential part of our business. Despite the added expense, we cannot work without it. The cost to set up a neuro and biofeedback practice is, however, hefty, as these costs need to be included with the cost of training and equipment, all in US dollars. In terms of ongoing basic training, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to companies like Brainmaster, Thought Technology, and EEG Spectrum, who have provided us with training blueprints and allowed us to train people at an adjusted cost. With the many obstacles standing in the way of becoming certified and setting up a business, the expansion of the neurofeedback community in South Africa has been significantly affected. We are grateful for the immense support we have received from the international community. Judy Crawford of BCIA has been a pillar of support in our journey. Jody has made a huge effort to try and understand the different dynamics at play in third world settings and look at creative ways to make affordable training and networking possible for us. She has also assisted us in making reasonable adaptations for a third world country, whilst encouraging us to aim for the high standards of BCIA. Today, of the active 70 BFSA members, 22 are BCIA certified, and a growing number of clinicians are on their journey to BCIA certification. The online learning platform offered by Biosource has come to our aid in enabling BFSA members to complete the neuroanatomy requirements and exam preparation for BCIA certification at a reduced rate. Some members have also used some of his other courses due to the generous discount offered. Thank you to Fred Schaffer for this resource. BCIA and ISNR have for many years assisted with ongoing training by creating a tiering system so that people in third world countries pay an affordable rate and in that way keep up with the latest advances in training as well as research and knowledge. We salute you for your generosity towards assisting with building this field in South Africa. A longer-term goal includes gradually introducing cost-effective bio and neurofeedback training into Africa, particularly Southern Africa. We currently have one member working in Mozambique. We also have members from the Middle East who have joined our association. Another long-term goal is to have training modules that people can take in phases and in this way build up knowledge of bio-neurofeedback from basic to more advanced levels. Ultimately, we hope to get this course approved and recognized by the South African Qualifications Authority. Apart from setting up a properly registered and constitutional association with all the work involved, we have had numerous biannual general meetings and have hosted international and national speakers in person and online. Basic 36-hour training is held on an annual basis. We have created an online presence through the BFSA website and the MedShare platform. For the last 4 years, we've organized regular training for our members, both virtual and in person. We've been running online monthly mentoring webinars where international and local clinicians present to our members. We post monthly articles on our MedShare platform with a quiz for members to learn from relevant research material. BFSA has managed to acquire continued professional development points for these activities, which encourages clinicians to attend them for ongoing certification. In 2022, we set up a basic training program in EEG and QEEG, which was well attended, with participants joining from South Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. This course was set up as an introduction to EEG so that clinicians can gain a basic understanding of what they are working with before embarking on the BCIA Bootcamp training program. We hope to make this an annual event. A successful series entitled Insights into EEG was presented in 2021 by a local neurophysiologist. We also arrange groups during which members can review raw EEG data and are guided through the analysis of this data by the neurophysiologist to gain fuller understanding of the raw EEG and its interpretation. In May 2022, one of our members, Helena Bester, the author of Neurofeedback, the Non-Invasive Approach, presented a webinar series entitled Developmental Trauma, the Aftermath and the Neuroscience, the Actual Pandemic, which looked at the disruptions in brain function related to layered adverse childhood circumstances and how bio and neurofeedback is an integral part of healing the debilitating consequences of trauma. Helena also presented on this topic for ISNR as part of their webinar series. BFSA has also negotiated a discounted rate for participants to attend the 2022 PESI certificate program in advanced trauma, PTSD and disassociation, where we had 41 members attend. We would love to engage with other relevant global partners in making bio and neurofeedback accessible to more clinicians so that a wider group of our population can benefit from this modality. We are a country filled with people that choose to remain hopeful. and despite our ongoing circumstances, are hungry for knowledge and the opportunity to spread that hope. In South Africa, we call this the spirit of Ubuntu, the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. For many generations, Africans have understood the potential of human beings collectively working together as one to achieve goals. In the words of celebrated South African social rights activist, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, it is the essence of being human. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is the difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we lead. Thank you to the following associations and companies and universities for their ongoing collaboration and support. And I'm going to end off with another short video clip. This song really tied South Africans of all walks of life together during the COVID lockdowns. Whether you were in a hospital setting, a school setting, or stuck out on a game reserve with no tourists visiting, everybody was unified by this song. Which now doesn't want to play.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana.
If you would like to contact us and be involved in the development of neuro and biofeedback in South Africa in any way, there are numerous ways to contact us by email, through our website, our Facebook page, and we're also on MedShare. Thank you to everybody for your time this evening. And now we can open the floor for questions.
Well, thank you, Colleen, for just the connection, the inspiration, and what I hope becomes part of an ongoing relationship, not only with South Africa Society and NRBS, but I hope that we can do it on an individual level as well. I do want to piggyback on your mentioning of Judy Crawford. She was the one that almost every time I saw her said, why aren't you doing anything with South Africa Society? She introduced me to Louise several years ago, and finally we made that happen. And I want to say, you know, we are all part of the world that South Africa is in, and I hope that today's webinar allows us to continue to really foster this, as well as any other countries that are represented in this event. You know, I can't mention you by name. I don't know where you're from, but we are just one world now, aren't we? Before, there are no questions in the chat, and I certainly want to invite them. But I also want to say, it's always been my feeling that practitioners in the US anyway have equipment they are not using somewhere in a closet. You bought equipment, you thought you were going to use it, you bought a different set of equipment or whatever, or you have equipment that's broken. If that is the case, please write to me at northeastbiofeedback@gmail.com. I will facilitate getting that equipment, getting it repaired if it needs repair, and also then getting it to the folks that can use it in the society at South Africa. One of the questions that has come up is, you know, how do you practice self-care, you know, in the face of the challenges that you face? Can you talk about that with us, Colleen? We can certainly learn from you all.
So I can't speak for the whole of South Africa, but what I do for myself is, you know, I really place a lot of importance on the quality of sleep that I get. So I focus a lot on that. I also do ISF neurofeedback on myself, where I can stick electrodes. I will hook myself up and do some sessions whenever I feel like the world is getting too much for me and I'm starting to spin a bit and worry about too many things. I calm myself down with neurofeedback. I also do yoga and practice my heart rate variability breathing techniques. So a lot of the modalities that I've got in my practice, whenever there's a gap, hook them on myself and put our practice to work even for ourselves.
As we should all do, but I'm sure, you know, for those that are in stressful circumstances, all the more important, but it's equally important for all of us, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Any other questions? You know, this is I had the opportunity to have a nice chat with Colleen and some other folks on the board before this meeting a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. And we talked about a lot of the things that she talked about today, but I'll tell you, hearing them for the second time just makes me feel better and better about, you know, what we're doing and the ability to work together. Here's a question about, do you find any schools have adopted the use of biofeedback?
Not many, you know, as a school having it available to learners as part of the school curriculum, but there are schools that will refer clients who are, you know, particularly going through a lot or have been through some sort of trauma. They will refer to us. So there's a school very close to my practice, and I see a lot of children from that school. They really believe in, you know, what we do, and they do see a benefit in their children. You know, so schools will refer to us, but there are very few schools that have this available in the school as part of their curriculum. Mm-hmm. It comes down to that there's not that many of us trained properly to do this. So, you know, it's not as freely available as we would like it to be.
Sure, sure. And how is, you know, biofeedback and neurofeedback generally accepted among just the general population?
So it's not very well known about. You know, when people come into our practices, eventually it's pretty much because they have tried everything else and they don't know what else to try, so they're going to give this a go. And a big role of the Biofeedback Association of South Africa is that we are trying to collaborate with more professional associations here in South Africa, so that we can talk about neurofeedback and what is available with other professionals like OTs, speech therapists, other psychologists who haven't been exposed to this technology, and really just spread the word about neurofeedback. And once people see the benefit it has for their clients, we find that the referral streams really start to pick up and more people make use of it. There's also cost implications, you know, as it is in America and all over the world. It's seen as sort of a luxury treatment. Not everybody who needs it can afford this type of therapy.
Yeah, so in that way, we're not that different, huh? What would a typical client be like for you, if there is any such thing? And then related to that, also, there's a question about, with all the trauma that you see, do you find that people require more than, you know, what they call the typical number of sessions, if there is even such a thing?
So the typical clients that we see would be people in the upper middle class and higher class in terms of income bracket. It's not very widely available to the average South African. My typical clients, I think it would very much depend on what area you're in, but as I said, there's schools close to my practice that will refer. So a lot of school-aged children that have been through either some sort of developmental trauma or have learning difficulties, the usual attention anxiety, and those are our main category of clients. And then we do find that we need to first settle anxiety, because a lot of our cues come out so red in the beta spectrum that you're not going to be able to fix, you know, or help with a learning difficulty if the person is so constantly so anxious and on high alert. So it does take a bit of time, and we find that you can't really use it in isolation. There has to be a multidisciplinary approach often. So it really is a big investment for people to put themselves through or to put their child through, because it takes quite a lot. But the average sort of neurofeedback process that we go through, you know, depending on what we're working on, but it's about 30 to 40 sessions, can be more, can be less, just depends on what the person has been through. But I don't think you will ever get rid of a little bit of anxiety. You have to be a little bit anxious to live here, because it will save your life as you pull up to a traffic light and there's people hovering around on the side of the road. We have to remain hypervigilant. We can't let our guard down.
It's part of the survival that's needed. Yeah. You know, one of the things that is becoming more a part of our awareness are the detriments of excessive technology use, you know, the EMF waves and just using phones to stay up at night rather than going to sleep. So with the regular blackouts that you experience, do you have any guesses about how electronic use and that, you know, just going to sleep is a different experience for folks experiencing that we might not be aware of?
And so, you know, I think a lot of the time we're so used to it. So we make sure that our power banks are charged, our iPhones are charged, our iPads are charged, our laptops are charged, so that if the power does go off, you know, during an evening where you would normally be watching TV or busy scrolling through stuff on your phone, the devices are still charged up. If you are lucky enough to have backup power for your Wi-Fi, it can stay on for a time, but often what happens is that the actual ISP will run out of battery, and so then they can't broadcast the signal to your home. Another thing that happens is that the cell phone towers, their batteries get stolen on a regular basis. So then the signals will go down. So people are not able to spend all night, gaming or watching YouTube or whatever anymore. But the other thing that affects your sleep is that sense of being vulnerable when it's pitch dark outside. We've had numerous instances where the actual power stations in our areas are vandalized and the cables are stolen. Your gate motor isn't working, your electric fence isn't working, your alarm might not be working, is the battery still going? So there's all those safety and security elements that are going on in the back of your mind when the power is out, because you are really vulnerable. So while we are able to switch off our devices and maybe fall asleep a little better, there's that constant worry in the back of your mind as well.
Thank you. While more questions are coming in, one of the things that I just remember of when we had the phone call setting this up, how much everybody from your board was laughing on the call. It was such a contrast where on the one side I was hearing about all these things that you all are hearing about, and then on the other side it was like, just like Colleen is today, what a soft-spoken, pleasant group of folks. And I think, the resilience is something that I wonder, folks have different levels of resilient. And obviously, when I was talking with the board, it is a very resilient, strong group. And do you see that sort of a dynamic impacting your work?
Look, if you don't laugh here, you will cry, because it's so frustrating. Just when you feel like you're making a couple of steps in the right direction, some other municipal or government level structure will let you down. The main reason that we're in the situation we're in is endemic widespread corruption within our government structures. And, as an ordinary tax-paying citizen, there is nothing you can do. The most efficient department run by our government is the Tax Revenue Service, but you get nothing back. There's potholes, the traffic lights don't work. In my area, the homeless direct the traffic in major intersections. They have no driver's licenses themselves. They know nothing about the rules of the road, but they are directing the traffic. And, people will throw a 10 rand out the window as a tip. They all give up directing traffic, run to the middle of the road and fight over the 10 rand. And then the traffic's gone to pot because nobody knows what to do anymore. But if you don't stay hopeful and you don't see the lighter side in things, I think you would really go down a very dark hole. So we have to remind ourselves that we are surrounded by beauty. Most people in South Africa are helpful people. They are smiling people. They will step in and fill a gap that the government has let us down with. You've got to find your community and be an active part of it so that you can see the good around you, because for every one bad apple there are a lot of good people here and a lot of people who are willing to help and take time out of their own day to go and sort out problems. We've got pensioners who go with their bucky and cement, and they go and they fix potholes in their towns out of their own pocket with their own time, because if it's left, they won't be able to drive out of their homes and get to the shops. It's hugely frustrating, but there is a lot of good people here who are just trying to make the most out of it and get on with their day.
Oh, what a bunch of strength. Can you talk about, when we think of trauma and stress, we think of calming the amygdala and just generally calming. But as you said, there's also a need to be hypervigilant in order to survive. So, one of our attendees is just like looking at how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think the environment almost does it for us, because We're so trained that, from little children, we tell them, you can't walk with your phone in your hand. You can't just talk to strangers. You can't go anywhere alone. You can't do this. We must lock the door at night. You've got to make sure the alarm is done. We're so programmed that is just the normal way of life. That I don't think we can train that away. So where your anxiety and your panic impedes your ability to live and to function, we can bring it down to a manageable level. But I don't believe that we ever get rid of it entirely, because as soon as you leave the practice and you get in your car, those behaviors are so programmed into you that you're already on hide your cell phone, lock your handbag in the boot, keep your distance in case you need to, do some evasive driving at the traffic lights, look around, turn your ring around so that your jewelry is not gleaming in the sun for people to look at. All of those little things are things we don't even think about. They're just behaviors that we have learned from when we were tiny, and we carry on performing them, even though we are calming down our brains. Our behavior and the environment that we step back out into forces us to simmer just on the edge. But it mustn't get to the point where you're too scared to go to the shops, or you're too scared to drive, or you're too scared to do anything. So it's a balancing act. But our upbringing and our behavior has taught us not to put ourselves in those vulnerable situations.
Well, yeah, so the comment was maybe your amygdala looks different. That would be an interesting study, huh? Yeah. So I think, this has just been, we still have some time left. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat, but this is just, such an enlightening connection for us to be making with you. And I am sorry it took so long, but again, I will call Judy in the next couple of days and tell her mission accomplished. And I see, Louise has joined as well. I didn't see you earlier, so maybe you were just in another part of my screen, Louise. But that's where the connection first began. And if there's anything that you wanted to add, or if there are any comments, Colleen, even based on the questions that we're asking, that you feel like we should be, you can enlighten us differently. I think, we're an open group and people are very happy, to be making this connection with y'all.
Yeah, Louise, if you have anything to add, then go for it.
Thanks, Angelica, and thanks everybody. I think what we've just realized, many years ago when I in person met Judy at a BFE conference, that's where the challenge started to say, if we want to grow in strength, we need to network. And I am grateful for this opportunity. And I think, Angelica, thanks for allowing us to just fit in with you guys as well. And I think we're always aware that we can learn from anybody. There's such a vast experience, and even though our situations might be different, there's always something that we can learn from one another. And I think in South Africa, we don't have enough opportunity for research just because of funding. But we would also, whatever advice we can get on research or connectivity around that, I think will make whatever we do in our communities also relevant worldwide then. So thank you. I mean, I can just give you a perspective. Dr. Basil van der Kolk, when we came out of our period of apartheid and our whole government structure and everything changed, there was a period of looking at crimes that was committed against humanity. And it was like a board listening to some of those crimes. And it was called the Truth and Reconciliation Committee that was working and listening to a myriad of trauma. And in the end, Dr. Bezel van der Kolk had to come and help some of the people on the board, like Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, because they couldn't sleep after a while. So it just shows us even just a secondary experience, what value that carries in our system. So I think in that way, we all connected in the world of trauma. And always just willing to learn.
Yes. All right. Well, there's lots of thank yous in there. I will see to it that you get the chat, because if you're not able to read it, there are just lovely comments about you and what you're doing and the connection that we're making. And again, I do want to say anybody that has, equipment that you're not using, please reach northeastbiofeedback@gmail.com so that we can facilitate this and help facilitate, the wonderful work. In this case, it's two ladies, but there's, a lot of practitioners there serving a lot of people. So any parting questions? Okay, very good. So thank you, ladies. Lovely to see you. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Go to the nrbs.org website. You can watch this video again. You can share it with friends. All they have to do is register and they'll get the link for it. So have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. Okay. And looking forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.